Conditions, Nerida, changing so frequently. How hard is it to forecast house prices?
Yeah, look, it is really hard. I mean, I sit on the Construction Forecasting Council and we're just holding off on forecasting until at least November because of the difficulties. At the moment, when people forecast, they seem to be either predicting a 10% fall or alternatively a 30% fall. Right now, we're really not seeing such dramatic declines in pricing.
What about the rental market, not only with availability, but also perhaps with people trying to get out of their lease due to job losses?
Yeah, look, I mean, although the market does seem to be holding up at a capital city level and in most regional areas, there are areas of weakness. We can see in some locations that there is very poor rental demand, for example. So locations that are highly reliant on foreign students are struggling with vacancy rate rises. Large parts of Western Sydney, southwestern Sydney, where we saw very big increases in properties become available to rent, are also starting to see a rising number of listings. So, I think on one hand, we've got this battle between rising unemployment, which is causing right now a lot of problems in the rental market, potentially will cause problems in the seller market as well. But alternatively, we do have an incredibly stable banking system, which right now seems the banks really do seem to be working with people who are affected by COVID-19, whether they're an investor or whether they're an owner-occupier.
And assuming, Nerida, that we don't see any more outbreaks like Melbourne, perhaps, how well do you think housing in decent suburbs are likely to hold up? Do you think we could even see an increase in some prices?
Yeah, look, we are seeing increases in pricing. I mean, if you go to Canberra at the moment, that city just hasn't seen a decline. If you go to Perth at the moment, we are starting to see some really positive conditions. Sydney, a report was released yesterday by the New South Wales Valuer General, which showed that 1 in 10 suburbs have seen more than 10% price growth. So, there are locations and there's certain pockets where prices are continuing to rise. There are locations that do tend to have bigger homes, bigger blocks, not necessarily in inner suburbs and not necessarily expensive suburbs, but those family homes seem to really be holding value better than, say, an apartment that was developed for an investor.
And can you tell us about the study by Fidelity in June, which showed that although 25% of people would pull money from their super, less than 2% would sell a house?
Yeah, so I guess the Fidelity survey was really interesting because it does show the level of confidence people have in housing. So even though, housing investment can be, there can be risks. I mean, if you have a look at the moment, there's problems with rental demand. Many locations are seeing drops in rentals, values aren't holding up. But when it comes to holding investments, the Fidelity survey really just showed that people are quite prepared to cash in their superannuation. A quarter of people said that they were prepared to take money out of their super, but they didn't want to sell their properties. So, I think at the moment, one of the things that does seem to be helping the property market, as I mentioned, the stable banking sector, but also this flight to quality that, a lot of investment types at the moment that are perceived as more safe than others do seem to be attracting a lot of funds.
And can you tell us about the COVID-safe regions around Australia? I think you've got there in your report Canberra and Perth being two of them.
Yeah, so Canberra and Perth I've spoken quite a bit about, but we are also seeing parts of many regional areas do really well. So mining towns at the moment, we've seen Karratha increase a lot in value, primarily off the back of those record levels of iron ore pricing. But northern New South Wales seems to be doing particularly well. If we have a look at the suburbs that are now seeing the highest views per listing, Linfield in Sydney's north is topping the list, but coming in second is Bangalore near Byron Bay. So it is quite extraordinary. I've never actually seen a regional town come up in the top 10 in terms of views per listing. But that northern New South Wales, that Richmond Tweed area, it is a very expensive area, but at the moment just seems to be attracting a lot of interest.
Yes, Richmond Tweed is a very interesting one as well. You mentioned in your report.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, it's expensive. The suburbs that are seeing very high demand in Richmond Tweed are places like Kingscliff and Byron Bay, Bangalore. they're suburbs or towns, I guess, that do have very high median pricing. I mean, Byron Bay is getting close to 1.5 million now. So, they're expensive. It's obviously, not obviously, but it does seem to be Sydney money that's driving perhaps money coming out of Melbourne as well. So perhaps driven by the fact that everyone's working differently, people may become less tied to capital cities now that a lot of us can work from home, which prior to COVID-19 was far more difficult.
It is going to be fascinating to watch, isn't it, that situation? And yeah, that northern part of New South Wales, a beautiful part of the world.
It is. It's such a stunning area. So, it's great for regional Australia. We've also seen places like Orange do really well at the moment. So, there has been a real shift to try and disperse people throughout Australia and get them out of capital cities over a prolonged period. But it does seem that COVID has really accelerated this trend quite quickly.
It certainly has. Nerida Conisbee, always a pleasure to talk to you, Chief Economist at REA Group.
Thanks for having me.